Tackling a mod for one of your favorite games that makes it harder is a humbling experience, but it's one I wouldn't trade for anything. The alternate fantasy mod for Final Fantasy IX has been keeping me on my toes for the duration of my latest playthrough of the game, to the point where I'm having to spend a lot more time in menus before boss fights putting strategies together and swapping out support abilities, where in the vanilla game, I barely had to do so. This is also helped by the fact that alternate fantasy includes a helping of new abilities for some characters that replace old ones, allowing for further strategic planning during fights against the reworked enemies with new stat blocks and sets of abilities. If you haven't seen my first video I've made on the mod, I had made it up to the point where Disc 1 of the original PS1 release of Final Fantasy IX would have ended, and I have now since made it past the point where Disc 2 would have ended. So I wanted to check in and go over some of the progress that's been made since that last video, and show a few things off that this mod does. Following on from our defeat at the hands of Beatrix and Burmecia, I now find myself in South Gate, in control of Dagger and Steiner as they work their way back towards Alexandria. I paid a visit to the equipment shop which had our first new weapons for Dagger, but aside from that, it just has some armor pieces we have already. I speed through some cutscenes and into the same carriage as Marcus from Tantalus, which is very quickly interrupted by Blackworld's Free, who is still alive, but very wounded and broken after the last fight we had with him on the cargo ship escaping Dali. The Blackworlds ended up opening the fight with Roulette, a skill it does not have in the vanilla game. What this does is it cycles through everyone on the field, including itself, and it tries casting death on whoever it lands on. In this first instance, it unfortunately landed on Dagger. It did eventually land on itself when casting Roulette, but since it's a boss, it failed as expected. During this boss fight, I ended up having Steiner try out his new armor break skill to lower the Blackworld's defense. As I found out during previous boss fights of Quina's blue magic, skills that lower defense and magic defense do work on bosses. Aside from Roulette, Blackworld's Free's ability pool is pretty basic, just having some standard black magic in its repertoire, which do still come with their small chances to inflict various status ailments depending on the spell used. After using Marcus to steal everything the Blackworlds had, I just had Steiner and Marcus wail on it until it eventually died. For good this time. A few more cutscenes play out from here, and after passing through a gate, I make it to the world map, allowing me to make my way towards... On the world map here, I did a bit of menuing, and noticed that Marcus actually has some usable abilities now. Admittedly, I never used these during my playthrough, so I have no footage of either of them being used, but he has two abilities here, Strong Hit and Contaminate. Strong Hit is an empowered physical attack that comes at the cost of Marcus damaging himself to use it, and Contaminate just causes the poison status to your target. After sorting out my menuing though, it was time to loop around the map for a bit in order to find our second friendly monster, the Friendly Ghost to be exact, who the friendly Moo hinted at back when we found it outside of Dali. I throw a piece of ore to it as requested, and it tells us to give its regards to Ladybug, who will be our next friendly creature we'll come across later down the line. I happily take the 10 AP reward for giving the ghost its ore and move on from there. Before I actually make my way over to Treno though, I have one stop to make on the way, past a few trees here, Quan's dwelling. For those watching who may be new to Final Fantasy IX and its story, Quan is Vivi's adoptive grandfather, who he mentions pretty early on in the story. Anyways, I'm only here for one thing, the Scorpio Stellazzio, just chilling in this little nook here, and then I bounce and make my way for Treno proper. Once the opening cutscene is done for the area, I steer Steiner over towards this fountain to drop a few gil coins in, 13 to be exact, to make the Gemini Stellazzio appear and grab it. That's not all though, I make my way over behind this item stall to also grab the Taurus Stellazzio. Now that I'm in Treno, I can go ahead and show what collecting all these Stellazzio coins does. If you head into this building here, you can talk to Queen Stella, who is collecting the coins, and offers you rewards for giving her the coins you have. I went ahead and gave her all 5 coins I had at this point in order to get the following rewards in this order. 1,000 gil, the Phoenix Pinion, 2,000 gil, the Blood Sword, and 5,000 gil. Getting the Blood Sword in particular at this point of the game is the main reason I went out of my way to get all the possible coins you can get so far. It's a good attack stat increase for Steiner, but also gives him lifesteal on his normal attacks, so he can heal with each attack. You can probably already see how useful this is. Also, if you don't get the Coral Ring by having Freya win the Festival of the Hunt, you can synthesize it here in Treno's Synthesis Shop. A whole bunch of cutscenes play out from here, but to give a quick summary, we run into Princess Garnet's old teacher, Dr. Tot, who lets Marcus take the super soft item to go save Blank, and helps us traverse back to Alexandria via the Gargan Rue tunnels underneath the observatory he calls home. On the way to Alexandria, however, I run into a boss fight against a worm thing that's apparently called Rava. I hope I pronounced that right. The worm, from what I could see, and confirmed with checking online, doesn't have any differing abilities compared to the vanilla game. Still has Devil's Kiss, Blizzara, and String. Not sure if it still has the ability Knight, as it never casted it at me before it ended up running away, letting the party continue on through to Alexandria, before getting captured by Zorn and Thorn. The game takes me back to the other split of the party now, to Zidane, Vivi, Freya, and Quina, now recovered and standing back up after the scripted loss against Beatrix. I set back out on the world map and book it straight for Clara, our next destination, which appears to be enshrouded by a massive sandstorm. upon approaching Clara's trunk, the sandstorm subsides enough to allow the party to enter through into Clara's trunk, a little mini dungeon of sorts before we make it to the city of Clara proper. The dungeon itself is mostly uneventful, however. I take out a few random encounters, loot as many chests as I could find, and make my way up to the actual city of Clara. The game kinda slows down from here for a bit of a story break before more action kicks in, so I'm just gonna speed through the noteworthy things I did here. I run into one of the Burmecians I met back in, well, Burmecia, and he now operates as the equipment shop for Clara, containing a weapon upgrade for Freya, along with a few other bits of gear I didn't have yet. After hitting a few story triggers, that same Burmecian scatters around looking for help, as the antlion appears to be mauling a kid, as he says. Following him down to the antlion's den shows that the kid is in fact Puck, and we enter into a boss fight after he's yeeted back at us. I started the fight by doing the holy trinity of fight prep with this party. Mighty Guard with Quina for Protect and Shell, Razor's Wind with Freya for party-wide regen, Soul Blade with Zidane to inflict blind on the antlion, spamming Focus with Vivi to boost his magic stat, followed by level 4 Defenseless with Quina to lower the antlion's defense and magic defense stats. After this, I did my usual strat. Had Zidane steal until it was out of items to steal, and keep everyone topped up in the meantime, then once all the items were mine, unleash the fury. The antlion's ability pool seems to be unchanged from the vanilla game. It loved hitting me with the Troubled Mucus across the board, and still has its Sandstorm ability, which gives party-wide blindness, along with bringing everyone in the party down to critical HP. Thankfully, I had Razor's Wind active to counter this a bit. It still has Fire, which it loved hitting Quina with for some reason, and kept inflicting the heat status effect on them, so I burned through a few Phoenix Downs, bringing them back up each time. I eventually got sick of reviving Quina every time and just had Vivi unleash a Blizzara spell, which did over 3,000 damage and took the antlion out. Just to provide some additional context to this, in the vanilla game at least, the antlion's max HP is only 3,938. I'm not sure what changes were made to the stat block for the mod, but this doing so much damage had me audibly pogging. Kill it. Okay, that's the most damage I've done in a single turn on this playthrough so far. With the boss fight done, more cutscenes happen, Freya does a dancey dance with the other Clarans, we see Steiner and Marcus stuck in the cage, Brian betrays Dagger's trust with Kuja knocking her out, and Zorn and Thorn being the little cuckers they are, and extracting Eidolons from her. Once I regain control, we start making preparations to head down Clara's trunk to investigate possible Alexandrian invaders. During this preparation, I find that Stiltskin is here in Clara, and buy another bundle of items from him, scoring a High Potion, Ether, and Phoenix Pinion from him for only 444 gil. Phoenix Pinions are very important right now, as in this mod, they have the bonus effect of removing the Doom status effect. If you remember my previous fight against Beatrix, she loved putting that on my party, so yeah, gonna need these for no reason in particular. I descended the trunk of Clara, dispatching a few Alexandrian soldiers on the way before we hit a cutscene that has us turning back around and speeding back to Clara itself to deal with the invading forces that snuck in while the party was descending. After repelling some more of the forces, I helped guide the townspeople safely to the cathedral, with more cutscenes playing out from here, and Beatrix showing up to treat us to round 2. Because I saved all the townspeople, they had a few items to give to the party, allowing me to do a bit of additional prep before hopping into this fight. Right off the rip, the fight differs from the first bout against Beatrix, as she opened up with Silence, which only ended up affecting Zidane but doesn't do anything to him, as his skills aren't cast specifically. Everyone else in the party was set up to guard against it. According to the stat blocks I found online, this isn't something she does in the vanilla game, so this is new. After that though, I went through my usual boss fight prep. Razor's Wind, Mighty Guard, Zidane on stealing duty, Vivi focusing, you know the drill by now. I did try Soul Blade with Zidane to put blind on Beatrix, however unlike the last fight against her, she actually guards against it this time. Beatrix eventually caught me off guard by randomly casting Holy at the party, which... Ooh, that's a sword though, for Steiner. Since when the fuck could she cast Holy? In case it's not obvious, she doesn't do this in the vanilla game either, at least not during her boss fights. Once I had all her items stolen, I went on the offensive. Or at least as offensive as I could while staying alive considering how much she hurts. Oh, and she ended up casting Cure on herself at one point. Huh? Illegal! Not allowed! Stop healing yourself! Despite my reaction, this actually is something she has available to her in the vanilla game, according to the stat blocks I found. Eventually, I hit the HP threshold, and the next scripted loss occurs. As Beatrix escapes Clara with the Black Mages, the party follows by hopping into the funny little teleportation orbs, except for Quina, who just runs away, I guess. Anyways, it's a good thing that the party escaped Clara now, because... So hey, are y'all ready to watch an entire civilization get wiped off the map? I hope you are, because it's happening regardless. Literally nuked with a spear. Bron, get off the screen. Your face jump scares me every time I see it. With the party escaped unscathed and now aboard Queen Bron's airship, some cutscenes play out again, and we're on our way back to Alexandria by way of the teleports Bron used to sneak the Black Mages into Clara. The game returns control back to Steiner and Marcus, who rock their cage enough to break out and begin their own escape. Marcus ends up bouncing to go to Evil Forest to free Blank, leaving Steiner on his own but only temporarily before Zidane, Freya and Vivi appear before him, filling him in on what's going on before they all speed off to find Dagger. With a 30-minute timer now upon me, I speed my way through the castle as quickly as I can, avoiding as many unnecessary encounters with the Alexandrian soldiers as I can in order to make it past the royal chambers, and down to the castle dungeons where Dagger is being kept by Zorn and Thorn, entering our next boss fight against them. In the vanilla game, this fight is actually a joke. The way it works is Zorn and Thorn can charge the other to prepare a spell, but if you hit the one that's charging, it interrupts the cast and they have to charge again. That strategy doesn't work here. It appears as though the mod removes the whole interrupting part of the charge, so the spells I have available to them will get casted no matter what you try. On that note though, I did notice that the spells I use appear to differ from the vanilla game stat blocks. The first spell casted by Zorn was Catastrophe, party-wide damage that appeared to inflict a good number of status effects as well. According to the vanilla game stat blocks, Zorn's only spell he has access to is Meteorite. This is the only spell they ended up casting between them though, so not sure if they do have access to more. After I did my usual steal all the items and then kill them strat, everyone in my party except for Freya just kinda keeled over and died for some reason. Still not sure why, even after reviewing the VOD footage. After reviving the whole party and getting them all healed up, the party make their way over to Dagger, picking her up and taking her back up the stairs and into the royal chamber, before we're approached by Beatrix again. She seems to hit a lot harder now, taking out a good chunk of my party with a few casts of shock and also stock break, which she can now use in battle instead of just for the scripted loss. By the time she was out of items to steal, Zidane had just hit trance, allowing me to let rip a Stellar Circle 5 cast, chunking out a good amount of her HP while also lowering her own chances to do critical hits. Freya hit trance not long afterwards, allowing me to send her skywards to rain down a barrage of spears, while Zidane remained on the ground attempting to pick everyone back up. With the rest of the party now up and standing, the Quadra Slash from Steiner, one of his new abilities thanks to this mod, is enough to take out the remaining chunk of Beatrix's HP, hitting the next scripted loss. Following this fight, more cutscenes play out, with Dagger waking up, Beatrix switching sides and going against Queen Bron, and the party of Zidane, Vivi, Dagger, and Steiner beginning their escape, with Freya remaining behind to aid Beatrix, allowing us to do some encounters with Beatrix in the party. Given that she's now a party member, she is nowhere near as overpowered as she was in the boss fights, but she's still a strong party member to have here, as I now have access to use her shock ability to just kinda one-shot these enemies. After descending a fair ways down, Steiner dips from the party to aid Beatrix and Freya, instructing Zidane and Vivi to get Dagger back to Treno. Our party are free are temporarily detained by Zorn and Thorn again, before we're knocked out by Marcus and a freshly unpetrified Blank, who open up the way to let the party escape, Marcus and Blank opting to stay behind to help out the others where they can. Our new party board the Gargant to make their way back to Treno, running into a new worm boss this time, but not the same one as before, this one being called Ravwi Margo. I hate these boss names. Just like the last worm boss though, the stat block doesn't appear much different from the vanilla game. It opened with Ultra Soundwave, which just did a bit of damage. Apparently it's meant to cause a mini status as well in the vanilla game, but just didn't on this first attack. But when it used it later, I noticed that it actually inflicts defense and magic defense down. I had Zidane go on his stealing spree after blinding it with Soul Blade, and kept Vivi on standby spamming focus while Dagger kept the party topped up. Once all the items were mined, I unleashed the Fury until it keeled over dead. We get a few more cutscenes here, showing a new worm showing up and chasing the Gargant, causing it to go too fast and speed right past Treno, taking us all the way through a winding tunnel until we hit the light, taking us outside into... Zidane, Dagger and Vivi all awaken, finding themselves crash-landed at Pinnacle Rocks, just outside Lindblum. Some cutscenes play out as Ramu appears and gives us a puzzle to solve to acquire his power, rewarding us with the Peridot Jewel to allow Dagger to summon him. The party then jumps down from Pinnacle Rocks just in time to catch Alexandria launching an assault on Lindblum, with Bran summoning Atomos to suck a lot. Look, I didn't know how else to describe this, leave me alone. Following this, the party enters Lindblum, putting us right into another batch of cutscenes after finding Minister Artania in the business district. To summarize, Lindblum is now occupied by Alexandria, and Sid suggests heading to the outer continent to find and defeat Kuja, in hopes that doing so will hinder Bran's bloodlust since Kuja won't be able to provide her with more black mages. With no access to any airships or boats, however, Sid suggests we head to a nearby swamp to look for an excavation site. The cave found inside said site is rumored to lead to another continent, and is the party's best bet to proceed. After we do a quick shop in Lindblum to get some equipment and items ready, we're led to Lindblum Castle to leave through the same exit we used to head for Burmecia, but not until we go through a mini stealth game that Alternate Fantasy brought back into the game, as this was not present in the vanilla game. Once we're down in the castle basement area, Sid provides us with a parting gift of a world map. Up until now, all we've had is a map of the Mist continent. So with our next destination in mind, we're all set now to head for... That's right, the swamp Sid mentioned is Cruz Marsh. The first thing we do here is get Quina back in our party, who is only interested in rejoining us as they seem to think we'll find good food on another continent. Oh well, at least I have my blue magic back. After exploring the marsh a bit more, I eventually hit a point where Quina decides to take off, seemingly overtaken by the smell of frogs alone. Following Quina's frog sense brings us to the entrance of the excavation site we were looking for, and I waste no time sending the party down to explore. As soon as we take a few steps inside, a gate opens and a chariot monster thing starts chasing the party down. Now, with this monster in particular, you can get into fights with it if it catches you. However, it's entirely possible to avoid the monster completely and run down this path to get away from it. The only thing is, I don't know if it's just me sucking, or if the mod changed things here, but I swear these swinging things did not swing this quickly in the vanilla game, and I got stuck on one of them for a bit, which got me into a fight with the monster. The downside of this encounter is you can't escape from it, and it forces you into a back attack as well, putting you at a disadvantage immediately. And it opening up with level 4 death was kinda sucky as well, as it took out Zidane and Vivi right off the rip. During the process of getting everyone revived, it also casted Doomsday, which is something that it doesn't have in the vanilla game, and if I recall correctly, is the final black magic spell that Vivi can learn, or at least it's the one that shows at the very bottom of the spell list once he's learned it. The thing with Doomsday is that it damages everybody on the field, including its caster, so it ended up hurting itself a little here. It also just has the normal death spell, but it had this in vanilla, so not super noteworthy. Anyways, its HP pool is pretty small, and after hitting it a couple of times with what I had available, it crumpled to the floor, allowing the party to escape and me to heal the party back up after that shanking it gave me. The monster didn't end up catching me again here thankfully, and I got through the rest of the path perfectly fine as it fell to its death, with the party proceeding onwards, right into another boss fight. This is Lani. There was a cutscene earlier in the game that introduced her that I didn't go over, but TLDR, Bran's hired her to get the pendant from Dagger and assassinate Vivi, with Bran stating that he is a defect running loose. Now, in the vanilla game, and I didn't know this until I looked up her stat block while writing this, Lani's programming will actually have her attacking Dagger most of the time if she is conscious, switching her target to Vivi if Dagger is KO'd. Her target can be occasionally switched once she is physically attacked, with her spitting out a dialogue box to indicate when this happens. From what I could tell while reviewing this footage, this programming still seems to be in place, as she opens up the fight by attacking Dagger right off the rip. Thankfully, Zidane's Soul Blade landed here, inflicting blind on Lani, so her physical attacks become less of an issue to worry about now, though she still has some magic up her sleeve. It's during this fight that I ended up using Dagger's scan spell for the first time, and it appears as though she actually has slightly less HP than her vanilla stat block, a max HP of 5,608 as opposed to the vanilla game's 5,708. A new ability she has here that wasn't present in the vanilla game is that she will cast Reflect on herself, which basically renders Vivi useless until it wears off, so I had him just spam Focus while I waited for that to drop off. Now, I didn't notice I had this until I was doing some off-screen grinding, but I stole a Gladius as one of the items from Lani here, which is a new dagger-type weapon for Zidane, and our next step up from the Ogre in terms of an attack stat upgrade for him. Lani also has access to the water spell here. This was in her vanilla ability pool, but oof, it hurt a lot here, leaving me with only Quina alive on only 22 HP at one point. Thankfully, getting everyone back up wasn't too rough. I think only saved by the fact that I had Zidane throw an elixir on himself once he was alive, as he was left as the only one up after Lani took Quina out not long afterwards. Once I had the last item stolen from Lani, I unleashed the Fury, beginning with letting Dagger cast Remove for the first time. His damage was a little underwhelming, doing a little less than what Vivi was doing for less MP, but I think Vivi had been boosted when I saw the numbers he was doing, so Remove gets a pass this time. Both Zidane and Quina got sent into trance towards the end of the fight, so I had Zidane unleash a Stellar Circle 5 cast here, ending the fight. With the boss fights out of the way now, we're finally free to explore Fossil Roo as a dungeon properly. The main gimmick of the dungeon is that there are wild gargants here we can ride, by grabbing one of the food stashes and using it to bring a gargant over and ride on its back. We can change the paths that gargants take by activating these switches, which will make the gargant take the other path on the forked tracks they use. Further into the dungeon, we run into Stiltskin again, offering us an item bundle including a Phoenix Pinion, Remedy, and Ether for 555 gil, which I happily accept. Aside from that though, this dungeon is pretty uneventful and was kinda boring, just like it is in the vanilla game. So let me just jump ahead to when we get ourselves out, and end up at... Now that the party's on a continent without Mist, the first thing to do would surely be to investigate and find a town to confirm where we are, and what we can do next, right? Wrong! It's time for grabbing a Chocograph first, and then our next friendly monster. I found some nearby Chocobo tracks to summon Choco, digging up the first outer-continent Chocograph I have access to, which contains the following: 9 Phoenix Pinions, 5 Phoenix Downs, 12 Paradots, 1 Diamond Glove. Now the Paradots, if you recall correctly, were the summoning stone we used to learn the Remove Summon spell. What having multiple of these does is it actually boosts the power of the Remove Summon. In the vanilla game, this power boost to summons is affected by the number of relevant stones you have up to a count of 99. However, in alternate fantasy, this is nerfed down to only counting up to 49 at most. Once I had all those collected, I entered the nearby forest and looped around a bit until I found the friendly ladybug, who the ghost outsider Treno mentioned a while back. The friendly ladybug takes 2 ore instead of just 1, unlike the ghost and moo, but this is no issue at all as I had a fair few stocked up. The ladybug departs, requesting we say hi to the Yeti next. After this, I ended up doing some off-stream grinding before continuing onwards, taking us into our first town of the outer continent. This is another one of those towns where it becomes a bit of a cutscene break before any progress happens, so this section may be pretty short. After hitting a few of the story triggers needed, Zidane runs into a black mage just leisurely shopping at the item shop store, before it gets spooked and runs off, with the dwarves informing the party that more of them reside in the nearby forest, right by where I encountered the friendly ladybug, apparently so deep in the forest that the owls don't live there. Before setting out though, I found the equipment shop, buying a few new items which included the Magician Cloak, which gives Vaelie a new spell in Prolepsis, a new spell for alternate fantasy that was not present in the vanilla game. What Prolepsis does is when you cast it, it does damage to the enemy you target, but then a few moments later, does a second hit even if it doesn't reach Vaelie's turn again. It's decently powered and non-elemental as well, and comes out cheaper in MP than the Ra elemental spells. With that all done, I set back out on the world map and headed for that forest, showing the black mage running deeper inside. Now, what the dwarves told the party about the black mages living so deep in the forest that the owls don't live there is a hint. If you examine the sign in the middle of the crossroad here, it shows the 2 directions, with a note stating if owls live there or not. When you go down the path where owls don't live, you'll see one of the owls fly off, with Zidane appearing back on the same map. You will need to keep running down the path where there are no owls each time in order to have all the owls fly off and proceed further, and the direction may be different each time. The path is static, so you can just look this up, but if you just want to confirm and make sure, you can just read the sign here to confirm the direction to go. Once the last owl flies off, we're treated to a cutscene showing the party right behind the black mage we were following, as it casts a spell to lift an illusion, showing a very alive forest as we follow it inside, leading into... Right off the bat, welcome to one of the best town themes of the whole Final Fantasy series. Fight me if you disagree. This is another cutscene fest before more action town, so I'll try and speed through what happens here pretty quickly, but there's a few things worth noting. Once the party splits, I control Zidane as we explore the village, picking up the Virgo Stellazio coin from the inn and checking out all the shops afterwards. The main shop to note here is the Synthesis shop, since it contains a decent upgrade for Zidane in that of the Exploder Thief Sword weapon. It's a decent attack stat up and has the add status of Trouble. Alongside that though, it lets Zidane learn 2 new abilities that are brand new to this mod, Warm Up and Windfall. Warm Up allows Zidane to boost his own strength stat, handy to have when he's our main physical attacker. Windfall is an attack that does wind physical damage and hits all enemies, with the added effect of lowering their defense and magic defense, doing all the work of Quina's level 4 defense less, except without needing to worry about the enemies being a level that's a multiple of 4. Alongside that though, we also now have the option to just synthesize Phoenix Pinions, and the cost to do so is surprisingly cheap, just a Phoenix down and a Giselle green. More cutscenes play out from here, leading on to the party getting a lead for Kuja's Silver Dragon being spotted in the northwest part of the continent, which will lead us on back to... So, technically, this section starts with the party just going back to Condopedi. However, it's only to trigger a few cutscenes to allow us to move onwards towards the mountain path. Unfortunately, to do so, this requires the party to go through a series of fake marriages, Zidane and Dagger, and Vivi and Quina. Yes, I know the Vivi and Quina one is optional, but this scene is too funny to skip. As the party leaves, they catch a glimpse of a thief fleeing Condopedi, with a Moogle tailing close behind. Chasing them out into the mountain path, the party finds that the thief is just a small girl, who has gotten stuck with their Moogle abandoning her the second it sees us coming. This is Iiko, our 7th party member, who will now be replacing Quina, who seems more interested in chasing the Moogle thinking it might taste good. So Iiko is basically Dagger number 2. She's another character who knows white magic and summoning magic. However, there's a key difference between the two. Dagger specializes in summons, and over the course of the game, we'll learn a lot more of them than what Iiko can. Iiko, on the other hand, specializes in white magic, and can learn a few white magic spells that Dagger cannot, and her trance ability is double white, similar to Vivi's double black. I haven't had a chance to show off Dagger's trance ability yet, but it allows her to call out a summon who remains in the background and attacks repeatedly for as long as Dagger's trance is active. According to the vanilla white magic list, the spells that only Iiko can learn include Regen, Full Life, Essener, Haste, Dispel, Might, Jewel, and Holy. Anyways, I'm done going on about Iiko's abilities and whatnot, let's continue on. The Condopedi mountain path is another mini dungeon pathway, linking Condopedi to 2 possible pathways, one towards Iiko's home of Madain Sari, my next destination, and the other towards the Iifa Tree, which I'll be heading to later for story progression. The dungeon's pretty uneventful aside from the boss and a puzzle element it has going on. Seeing as I can't show the full puzzle off until after the boss fight, let's just skip ahead to this one now. This is Hilgagaz, a giant, that according to this Final Fantasy wiki I've been following along with while getting info for these videos, his name is a mistranslation of Hilgigas. The first thing to note here is this guy has a super rare item slot to steal from, containing a fairy flute, a new weapon for Iiko. In the vanilla game, this item is notoriously difficult to steal, with the stat block showing a 0.39% success rate. Due to how Alternate Fantasy changes stealing while the bandit ability is active, however, it doesn't take me long to secure this. Its ability pool doesn't appear to be different from the vanilla game. Still casts Earthquake a bunch, which can be avoided by having the party in float status, which Iiko can just provide right off the rip. Aside from that, it just has a couple of physical hits that don't do anything too noteworthy, aside from healing itself with Curaga occasionally, but it only happened once during this fight. I did my usual thing, of having Vivi spam focus while Zidane stole everything, including the fairy flute I mentioned before. After all the stealing was done, I unleashed the Fury once again, using the summons from both Dagger and Iiko to hit it a good chunk, while Vivi unleashed some casts, even getting a double cast in once he hit trance. The boss didn't last too long once I started attacking, with the second bit of damage from one of Vivi's Prolepsis casts being what killed it off. I checked the stats on the fairy flute for Iiko here, finding that it gives her the jewel spell I mentioned earlier, along with Time Leak, which is a new one for this mod. What Time Leak does is it inflicts slow on an enemy, while at the same time putting haste on a party member. Now, I mentioned earlier about a little puzzle for this path. Across the whole path, both before and after that boss fight, there will be these pedestals that each contain a different coloured stone: blue, red, yellow, and green. If you take all of them to this pedestal and slot them all in, it gives you a moonstone. Now, I already had one of these, due to perfecting the sword fight duel at the start of the game and impressing Bran, and getting it as Steiner. However, I don't believe I mentioned it in my previous video, as I was not aware at the time, but there are only 4 moonstones throughout the whole game. That one at the beginning of the game is the first you can get, while this is the second. There are 2 more you can get for the rest of the game, and one of them is from the Friendly Monsters side quests, while the last you can just get from Steelskin later on in another location. With that puzzle all done and wrapped up though, I'm free to proceed on through to the world map and start making my way towards Before entering the town properly though, I do a few loops around the nearby forest to encounter the friendly Yeti. I throw him a couple of pieces of ore and he thanks us, requesting we say hi to the nymph next. Anyways, now that the party's entered Mundane Sorari, do you know what time it is? That's right, it's another cutscene break before more action happens. Honestly, nothing super noteworthy happens here, aside from the grabbing of the Libra Stelazio. TLDR, the party stays the night and decide they want to check out the Iifa Tree, with Iiko tagging along to remove the seal the Summoner Tribe placed to restrict access. Before we take off though, we can talk to this Moogle here at the entrance to access a shop, allowing us to top up our item stockpile before we head off, which is always handy to do. I headed back off to the world map, looping back to the mountain path to take the other exit towards the Iifa Tree, but before entering it, we have a friendly nymph to say hi to and deliver some more ore to. Upon doing so, she requests we say hi to Jabberwock next, leaving us with a parting gift of an emerald, the gemstone we'll need to give to Jabberwock, as from this point onwards, they'll stop asking for ore. Now that we're all done and settled there though, it's time to enter our next dungeon. This dungeon opens up with Iiko removing the Eidolon seal placed by the Summoner Tribe, rewarding us with the Diamond Gemstone, which will allow Iiko to summon Carbuncle. Delving into the actual dungeon itself, a few of the enemies here are actually classified as being made of stone, so what you can do now is actually throw a soft at them. In the vanilla game, I believe doing this would just outright kill it. However, it looks like for Alternate Fantasy, throwing a soft at a stone enemy will instead just deal half of its current HP and damage. Alongside that, there are these zombie enemies too, which you can send out a Cura from either of the White Magic casters to deal damage to them with. And by extension, you can also just cast Life on one of them at a time to kill it outright, like I do for these zombie dragons. The dungeon's pretty uneventful aside from all that, so let me jump ahead to our next boss battle against the Soul Cage here. Now, in the vanilla game, this fight can be turned into a giant joke. It's undead. Given what I said about the zombie enemies before, you know what that means, right? Casting Life on it will kill it instantly. However, while Alternate Fantasy has kept the undead classification on Soul Cage, it appears as though they added an extra something to its code to protect against life in particular. Going into the Soul Cage's abilities itself, it has Mustard Bomb, which is capable of just inflicting the heat status on a party member immediately. Not good for my Iiko who hasn't learned Body Temp yet to prevent that. It also has level 5 Def, but thankfully I was at a point where this didn't hit anybody at all, so I was safe there. Just like the vanilla game, it also has Shockwave, which was just party-wide non-elemental damage. However, in Alternate Fantasy, it appears to damage the party's MP as well. But just like every other boss before it, I did my usual thing. Zidane stealing everything, Vivi focusing, while Dagger and Iiko remained on standby for healing. Once everything was stolen, it was time to attack. I had Vivi casting, Dagger and Iifa summoning, while Zidane opened with a Windfall to reduce his defenses, before going into his own regular attacks. In due time, the Soul Cage fell. With the Soul Cage down, a few more cutscenes play out showing the mist dispersing, and one of the Madain Sari Moogles returning telling Iifa that some shit's gone down and to come back to Madain. So off we go now back to... Unlike our last visit to Madain Sari, this one actually has things happen that are worth noting for the video. Cutscenes happen, as expected, and the party skedaddle on over to the Eidolon Wall to find that Lani has kidnapped Iifa and is holding her hostage to try and get the pendant from the party again. Right before the pendant can be handed over to Lani for Iifa's safe return, however, this big man hops in and interrupts, tells Lani to get lost, and then challenges Zidane to a 1v1, with Zidane more than happy to oblige. Now, admittedly, this is where my second game over of the playthrough came in. I was not super prepared for how much harder this guy hits in this mod. Also, he starts with haste, which probably didn't help. Because this is a 1v1 and I was having Zidane start by doing his usual Steel Fest, I prepared for the fight by having Zidane start in the back row, so that he took less physical damage for the fight. The first thing I noticed while beginning my usual Steel Fest was that I somehow made his strength go down, which I believe may have been a side effect of the Steel Gill ability, as it occurred when I got some Gill as well. Part of this fight as well is that Red here will spend a few turns dancing around the battlefield. His evasion stat is boosted during this, and he will counter if attacked. So usually you'll need to wait for him to be back in the normal spot before attacking. Thankfully, he has a little speech notification here to signify when he's returning to his spot. The good thing is, you can still try stealing from him while he's doing this at no penalty, so that's what I ended up doing. It looks like this mod is also made it so that Red is capable of inflicting slow on Zidane if he hits, which combined with the fact that Red starts with haste, is kinda whack. Once Zidane was done taking everything, I had him follow up with a Windfall to lower Red's defenses, and then tried having Zidane spam free energy to try and get some damage out while Zidane was in the back row. Now, I had a feeling that because Zidane was in the back row, this was causing free energy to not do as much damage as it should, since during one of Zidane's counterattacks, he did about the same damage, so I tried shifting Zidane back into the front row. This was a mistake, as Red started dealing a lot of damage to Zidane after this, which eventually led to me getting overwhelmed by the damage and how fast Red could attack, and got me that game over I mentioned. Once I got back in for round 2, all I did after stealing everything was had Zidane spam Windfall. Not only was this the defense shredder, but it was also consistently doing higher damage than free energy from the back row. Then it became a war of attrition for a bit. Eventually I realized that I should be using Zidane's strength buff ability that I had access to, so I ended up popping that too. Shortly after using that, Zidane hit trance as well. I had him rip a Solution 9 cast which finished the fight, dealing just over 3000 damage. Red ends up running off after Zidane lets him live, and a bunch more cutscenes play out from here, leading on into the next day with the party preparing to head back to the Iifa Tree, and Red showing up to question Zidane's choice to let him live, leading into Zidane just recruiting him into the party, and now officially we know him as Amarant. So Amarant is our 8th party member, and in a vanilla game at least, is the final party member that could be recruited to the permanent lineup. However, I leave him out of the party for now, while keeping the original 4 to head out from Madain Sari, taking us back to... Cutscenes happen, Kuja appears, we follow him along to call him a bitch right to his face. Bran shows up with a fleet of boats intending to double-cross Kuja, believing that she has the power to do so since she controls Dagger's original Eidolons, summoning Bahamut to try and attack Kuja and his dragon. Kuja leaves us with a parting gift of some mist monsters that he can apparently just conjure up with magic, but they fall pretty easily. Dagger runs off to find another Eidolon that was sealed around the Iifa Tree to try and save Bran, leaving our party and slotting Amarant into her place, as another Mistodon shows up to fight. It doesn't last long. The party run down the roots of the Iifa Tree to chase after Dagger, who does indeed find the Eidolon mentioned before, but there's one problem. It's Leviathan, the tidal wave summon. Given Bran and her fleet are in boats, this will do the exact opposite of save them. On the plus side, fuck yeah, we have the Aquamarine to learn Leviathan later. More cutscenes happen, Kuja does something, and assumes control of Bahamut, turning him against Bran and absolutely destroying the Alexandrian ship fleet. Being on the verge of death, Bran appears to have awakened from her greed-filled state, using her dying breath to tell Dagger that the Alexandrian people will be happier with her on the throne, after she had led Alexandria down the path of ruin with her bloodlust. The cutscenes transition back to Alexandria now. Dagger, accompanied by Dr. Tot, Steiner and Beatrix, lays down a wreath of roses on the grave of Queen Bran. With one final FMV playing out, this is where Disc 2 of the original PS1 release would be ending, which means... with 2 out of 4 discs done for the story, I think it's a good time to loop back in and give my thoughts on this mod so far, given how much more of it I've experienced now. Well, I can confidently say that this modded playthrough of Final Fantasy IX continues to keep me engaged and hooked in deep. The amount of extra thinking and strategy I need to put into these boss fights continues to impress me, and the amount of extra abilities I have now that weren't present in the original game only helps to cement this, allowing for even more strategies going into boss fights that I never considered previously. However, I'm not done yet. There's still a huge chunk of the game left to go, with 2 out of 4 continents still unexplored, and none of the optional super bosses having been encountered yet, and I'm very interested to see just how rough those fights are now, especially considering how rough they can be in the vanilla game. If you're interested in following along, I've been streaming this playthrough once a week. Initially, I was streaming this on both Twitch and YouTube. However, since the last video, I have dropped Twitch and have only been streaming on YouTube, with the full playthrough so far being available to watch via the VOD playlist, linked in the description below. If you want to check the alternate fantasy mod out yourself, it will be linked in the description as well, along with a link to the Moguri mod, which I've also been playing with, as the 2 mods are compatible with each other, and really come together to make Final Fantasy IX feel like a fresh experience again. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to hit the like button, and maybe consider subscribing if you want to see more like this, or if you'd like to get notifications for when I stream next. As of scripting this video, my only other game I've been streaming lately is Dragon Quest XI, which is my first ever Dragon Quest game, after having grown up a Final Fantasy fan all my life, and I'll be doing some videos on my experience with that game in the future as well. Thanks for watching this long, and I'll catch you next time if you choose to come on by.